I've got a friend from work who was asking about what is a merge. She's not trying to install Git on her laptop. She's not really a developer. She's just looking for some high-level information about version control and what a merge is. And honestly, I couldn't find anything particularly useful for her on YouTube. So welcome to an intro to merging and distributed version control. Back in the day, there were websites that were really just a single file. Before we had CSS, before we had JavaScript, you had an index file. Perhaps it was called index.html, and you put that in your root directory, and bam, that was it. You were live. Now, websites can be hundreds of files, possibly even thousands of files. We introduced these concepts of dynamic rendering, which now all of a sudden you're creating all these edits. Now all of a sudden you are going to be perhaps constantly editing these files, right? So, and now let's say it's just one person. Okay, fine, that's no big deal. As the number of files grows and as the number of people creating edits grows, you can no longer just do it with file names, right? You need a system. You need something to be looking at where these things are coming from, who's the last person to edit it, make sure that the dates get updated. And so anyway, that's where version control came from. And the first kind of version control really worked just like a library, right? Before you could look at a file, you'd had to do what's called check it out, which means if anyone else tries to edit this file, we're not going to let them. We're not going to let anyone touch this file until whoever it is that checked it out in the first place either creates that edit and saves it or unchecks it out, gives it back and says, you know what, I'm actually not going to do anything with this. And that worked for a little while. But the problem there was, sometimes you've got more than one person that want to work on the same file. And how do you handle that? Linus Torvald, I believe is his name, invented Git, which is basically a version control system, but it's decentralized. The idea is that now all of a sudden, if you're using a decentralized version control system like Git, which is what we use, now all of a sudden different people can edit the same file. Great. So we've solved that problem, but we've created another one. Okay, now Joe and Michelle can edit this file at the same time. Wonderful. What happens when Joe and Michelle are pushing two different sets of changes on that same file back to the master branch? So that's what a merge is you've got two people that have two different versions of this same file, and they're trying to push it back into the same place. And so what do? You're saying one of three things. You're saying either prioritize Joe's version over Michelle's, prioritize Michelle's version over Joe's, or prioritize them both and just keep everything. Typically, people aren't editing the exact same part of the same file. So the merge engine typically can look at it and say, okay, we can probably keep all of this. There are situations where that's not obvious, and that's when the merge engine will flag and say, conflicts. There are conflicts present, and you need to do this on your own. You're always merging from one thing into the other, right? So you've got a branch that is being merged into, and you've got a branch that is merging. And so that's why we try to encourage people to merge their branches back into master as often as possible. We say, try to do that every couple of days or maybe over a week. The longer you wait, the longer you run this risk of basically creating problems for yourself. So anyway, that's branching. That's the idea of branching. So what did we cover? We covered what is version control, how it started as basically sort of a library system, but that only let people check things out one at a time, and that doesn't work. So now we've got what's called Git, which is decentralized. It's also a version control system, but it's been engineered in such a way as to allow more than one person to edit the same file at the same time. And then you handle that later as potentially a merge conflict. Merging is the process by which we pull everybody's work back into the project and address those conflicts directly as they come in. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, thanks.